Have you ever just been scrolling through real estate listings, say on Zillow or Redfin or realtor.com, and just been completely lost? Trust me, you're not alone. And today we're going to be diving deep into what I'm looking for as a real estate agent as I'm looking through these listings. If you're looking to find that perfect property, this is the video for you. My name is Ben Quann. I'm an associate broker here in Virginia. I've been licensed for a little over 12 years, sold hundreds of homes. Let's get into it. Now, in our last video, we talked about kind of locations and a lot of things you need to be paying attention to as a first-time home buyer. So we're not going to touch on all that, but let's break down Virginia really quick. We have Northern Virginia, Central Virginia, Southern Virginia, and then we have more of our mountain side, which is pretty much all of Western Virginia follows the Blue Ridge Mountains or the Appalachian Mountains. So depending on where you want to be, the hustle bustle, kind of the best of everything, which is where I'm at, or more of that beach or mountains, depending on where you want to go. Virginia has a very diverse market. There's so many different options for you to pick from as a buyer. So you do kind of need to figure out your locations first. And then even within those locations, you have a lot to pick from as well. Here in Spotsylvania, I can be 20 minutes to Fredericksburg, the heart of the city. And then 20 minutes, I can be really rural and kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So we have a little bit of everything to pick from in between. The cool thing as a real estate agent, I can look back at the history of that property. So if it's ever been listed before, I can see the progression of that house as the time goes on. If it's been foreclosed, if it's been sold, how much did it sell for, and what it looked like, because I can still find those photos of what it looked like before, say, a major remodel. Of course, every listing is going to be a little bit different with like its local twist, whether it be in an HOA or a neighborhood or schools, days on the market. Everything's going to have a little bit twist to it. We're going to get into that detail now. So before we get into the actual main body, we should probably talk about a couple different layouts that we have around here. Now, this isn't going to touch on everything because there's always a unique house that pops up here and there. But for the most part, this is what our housing market looks like here in, say, Spotsylvania and the surrounding counties. Now, most of these houses I've actually listed in the last couple of years. And so these are all true houses that were in our market in the, say, the 5-county area, being Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg, King George, Stafford, and Caroline County. Now, I work further than that, but those are our 5 main areas that kind of, if you think about Fredericksburg City, so if you think of like Spotsylvania being an independent city, and pretty small at that, it's 40,000 people. You have Stafford that's just north, Spotsylvania that kind of borders it to the west, Caroline just south, and then King George just east. So those are like the 5 main counties around here. But there are a lot of other counties that I work, say like Orange County or Westmoreland, Prince William, stuff like that, that are still considered our market, but just not the 5 main counties. So the first and foremost, I think, detached or attached. Detached meaning it's a single family home that's by itself. They come in a very wide array of different house styles, but let's start with Rambler, being a 1-story house. And then we'll go to like a split level, which is your most bang for your buck. That's when you walk in the front door, you either have to go up or down. They are the best bang for the buck, but a lot of folks don't like it, so you have to pay attention on the resale back end. So on this, I have a couple different Ramblers, a huge brick Rambler, kind of a medium, nice size Rambler, more modern home, but then they can get down to, say, like this 3-bedroom, 1-bath house that's just under 1,000 square foot. We have plenty of those running around too. They can vary in all different shapes and sizes, but usually a Rambler or a Branch, depending on where you're from, is a 1-story home. And then you have your traditional 2-story house. That could be considered a colonial, sometimes craftsman, depending on kind of the finishes of the house. But a colonial is very average around here. And that looks just like your traditional box 2-story house. Could have a basement, could not. We don't really worry about that for the actual style of the house. Then you have my personal favorite, which is a Cape Cod, which is technically a 1.5 stories. So in my case, my house is 2,000 square feet on the first floor and say 700 up top. So not truly a full half, but a 1.5 stories. That's a Cape Cod. And you have those dormers upstairs that kind of usually are in the bedrooms, cool closets, that kind of stuff. It's my favorite house. I just like the aesthetics of it, and that's why I built one myself. On the other side of it, we have attached homes, being townhomes and condos. And we do have some duplexes that come up every once in a while, but not for the most part. Townhomes are very simple. You either have an in unit or you have an interior unit. And they could be a whole line of houses. Most of the newer neighborhoods are building a kind of a mix of single family and townhomes like houses, whether they're villas or whatnot. But townhomes are a great option, especially you get a lot of bang for your buck. Sometimes they have garages, sometimes they don't. but a lot of the newer ones do. And then you have condos. We don't have a whole lot of condominiums around here, but we do. And I've sold a few, and one of my biggest sales ever was a condo, which was a whole 3rd floor of a building right in the heart of downtown. Now, one red flag that I'll throw out really quick with the condo, even more so than say HOA, is the condominium fee and the condo fee. They can get very pricey. Remember, they're taking care of the whole exterior of the building, so it can get pricey. And I've seen them anywhere from a couple $100 a month to all the way up to a couple $1,000s a month. So you have to pay attention to that. No matter where you're buying, whether you're buying in Virginia or somewhere else, they kind of stay true on very high fees. In fact, I talked to my realtor buddy down in North Carolina. They've gotten hit with some storms. They get special assessments. They might have a condo fee, which is a couple $100s a month, but they might have special assessments where like a storm hit that property and they're paying $10,000 a year on top of a very high condo fee. So all that being said, be very cautious when you're buying in a condo on the fees that go along with it. All right, so a couple key indicators to look at while you're scrolling through these listings is square footage, of course. Now we have above grade and below grade square footage. Every website's gonna be a little bit different on how they're calculating that square footage. Just keep in mind, above grade square footage is usually anything above a basement. And as far as pricing is concerned, above grade square footage holds a lot more value than below grade square footage. I'm gonna throw some numbers out. Don't get too caught up on the numbers, but above grade square footage could mean the difference between $100 a square foot versus below grade square foot could only be say $15 or $30 a square foot. It's cheaper to finish a basement than the whole house. So when you're looking at different values, above grade square footage will adjust the value the most out of say overall square footage. Below grade square footage is just not a huge factor. Most people want to see a basement. Now, whether it's 700 square foot down in the basement or 800 square foot, we're only talking about a few bucks difference in price. Now, of course, you also want to pay attention to things like layout. So on my listings, or a majority of all my listings, I usually do a 3D tour that kind of walks you through that layout and also can build out a floor plan for you as well. I enjoy it, something to pay attention to. Sometimes if you look in those websites, you'll see a little reel, which you actually can click on, and it either be a video tour or say a 3D tour, which is really neat. Always pay attention to year built. Considering Fredericksburg's been around for a couple hundred years, 1700s very easily. So obviously we have houses that were built pre-Civil War all the way until this year of 2025. I'm not gonna say any decade was better than the other. They all have their own little issues that they're gonna be dealing with. Obviously newer houses are less maintenance and that kind of stuff, but you don't have the character of an old house. So things for you to pay attention to as a buyer with whatever you want to do. Obviously updates are a great thing, and you want to make sure those updates were done right. Obviously there's, especially with like say Pinterest, there's a lot of folks that are kind of doing their own upgrades. That's something that we'll probably hit on say during the home inspection. We'll know pretty quick whether that was a handyman special or a homeowner special versus say like a Class A contractor that does this for a living. And then the last thing that we'll kind of touch on for like the key indicators is say that HOA again, condo fee, what does it involve? Now, just know in Virginia, if we go under contract and you're in a condo or an HOA, you'll get a right of review of those docs. And so you usually get like a 3-day window to kind of read over all the docs, make sure everything's in order that you like to see it, make sure there's not any rules in there that actually applied to you. Say, if you bring in home a work van or something like that. Also, what's an addition look like? If I want to put a fence up, what are the rules there? That kind of thing. So just another key thing, not every neighborhood we're going to have HOA docs for until we go under contract, especially some of these smaller ones, but something to pay attention to. Evaluating locations and communities. Now this is going to be different for everybody, whether you want to be out in the country or you want to be more in a neighborhood or say even a city. Now the good news is most of our area is pretty insulated when it comes to the housing market compared to other places in the nation, being that we're just south of DC. There's a lot of federal government jobs up north that a lot of our folks commute to. But some key indicators here to be paying attention to are school districts. Now, I really can't judge a lot of the schools because different fair housing laws and stuff like that, but I can give you the resources to check out schools and do your own homework for sure. But there are areas that are more sought after based off the schools. So from a resale value, you have to pay attention to that. I would say one of the other things too is commute. As I've hinted on many times, a lot of our folks commute, say up north or down south to Richmond. And so you want to pay attention to, say, commute time. And as a buyer, when you come to me, that's one of the first questions I'm going to be asking, because I have software that I can literally plug in the address that you need to go to work and say, I want to be no more than an hour from this area, say leaving at 8:15 on a Monday. And we'll take all the data that's out there for, say, traffic and commutes, and we'll actually build a radius around there. And then we can kind of hand pick the locations we would like you to go look, or we would like to start our home search. And we can hand pick the locations that we can start our home search on. So it's pretty cool, but something to pay attention to in your mind. If you tell me you don't want to drive more than 30 minutes from your job, well, that's a good starting point for housing. Obviously, other things like amenities, I've had people tell me that they want to be within 10 minutes of a Starbucks and 10 minutes of a Target. Those are probably the more extreme examples, but a big thing around here is, say, Lake Anna, and some people want to be pretty close to Lake Anna. Just depends on your preferences, but that's things to be paying attention to as well in the back of your head. Of course, if you're picking a neighborhood, you want to get the vibe of that neighborhood. A lot of neighborhoods at this point have like Facebook groups, and you can always scope them out on that. Plus, they have community events and stuff of that nature as well. I always recommend taking a drive by to that neighborhood, or maybe a couple drive-bys to that neighborhood to make sure it's the thing that you're looking for. And then the last thing, for kind of an overview, when you're looking at these listings, I always recommend aerial photos. Always recommend it, especially if we're looking out more in the country, because there's not HOAs. So I've shown up to houses that there's a power plant really close, or say a junkyard, or maybe just the neighbor got a little crazy and doesn't really care what his yard looks like. These are all things that I can't control, of course, but aerial photos are a great thing to look at. And that's one of the first things I recommend people to do before they get too excited about that house. Reading between the lines. A couple red flags to pay attention to. One being the house is sold as is. Usually means one of two things. Either they're in the seller market and they just simply don't care and they don't want to look at it. They don't want to look at the home inspection. They don't want to look at anything. You want to do a home inspection, you're more welcome to it. Or even worse is they know that there's some issues going on with the house, and it's up to you to figure out what those are and how you want to treat them. I always recommend staying away from homes sold as is. Of course, anybody can negotiate anything, no matter if it's sold as is or not. We can always ask for it. Say we get in that home inspection and the roof's leaking, but the house is sold as is. Well, we're gonna get out of the contract unless you fix the roof, kind of thing. So always take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, there's a lot of things that I'll be able to pick up on when I get into that house without me being a Class A contractor by any means. But, you know, just because it's being sold as is doesn't mean that's truly what it is. Sometimes it's just a seller that just doesn't want to fool with the house. But if it's one thing, then maybe they'll fix it. Who knows? Days on the market's also a very big thing, with one caveat. Obviously, new construction, most people want to buy houses that they can see. So some builders will actually list houses on like a design that they're going to build on the property or something like that, just the plans. And those houses could sit for a long time before they ever get under contract, or the builder will go ahead and start building the house, and then they usually end up going under contract. So take new construction with a little grain of salt. But days on the market for your average resale, every market's going to be a little bit different. But if it's been in our market and it's been on the market for days, 200 days, usually, yeah, there's something going on with that house, whether it be cosmetic or structural, or a lot of times it's just the house is overpriced for what it is. And just because it's overpriced and it's been on the market a lot of times, folks come to me all the time and say, hey, I bet that guy would take a very low offer. And I've seen the opposite. They are stubborn as all get out and they just don't want to budge. So just because it's been on the market a long time doesn't mean they're just always flexible. They should get the sign at this point that their house isn't selling when everything else is selling in, say, 14 days. But sometimes it just doesn't happen that way. So days on the market is something we always want to pay attention to, because it could mean a couple different things like I was talking about. But by and large, sellers are more open to be negotiable if they've been on the market more than the average house in the area. Of course, if the sellers advertise in closing costs or rate buy downs and stuff like that, that's always a very good perk. Sometimes they could be throwing in a year's worth of HOA dues or a home warranty or something like that. That's other things that we'll pick up in the the listing that you'll want to check out. And depending on what they are, we can dig into them a little bit more. Side-by-side comparisons. Simple spreadsheet's really good. I always look at almost everything in a spreadsheet anymore. Now we can also build you a portal and you can X out the things that you don't like and then keep the ones you like, and you can heart them and stuff like that. But that only goes so far as it's kind of an overview. If you start looking at say 15, 20 houses, your spreadsheet with all your wants and needs is a very good thing to kind of keep everything in track. And while we're talking about wants and needs, always prioritize your needs versus your wants. Of course, everybody wants a fence. Of course, everybody wants a garage. Of course, everybody wants a pool. All those things can be changed. Of course, the house is the most expensive part, and we want to make sure that the house actually fits your needs. Because it's very expensive to build an addition. It's very expensive to put a garage on. It's not expensive to build a deck. It's not expensive to put a fence in, things like that. So your needs versus your wants are something that you really need to kind of hone in. And I'll tell you straight out, if you're kind of being unrealistic on those wants, you're not going to find that and you're going to be discouraged. So keep that in check. That's all I'm going to say. And as we're wrapping this up, we're going to talk about kind of a local context just to kind of know our market. Every market's different. So depending on where you're looking, talk to your realtor about kind of understanding this. Supply and demand. It's the biggest thing that drives the housing market. If there's no houses and there's a demand, you're going to be competing. Months of inventory, which I've talked about on this channel a lot, talks about how many months of inventory you have on the market at any given time. And that would be, if no other houses come on the market, how many months would it take to get rid of the months of inventory that you have? And there's 200 houses on the market, you have 2 months of inventory. Simple as that. If no other houses got listed, that's the months of inventory. A good rule of thumb is 1 to 3 is still showing a seller's market. 3 to 4 is kind of your average market. Anything above 4, say 5 or 6, that would be more of a buyer's market. There's many things for you to pick on and not that much demand. Now we have been trending up since the craze of say 2020 and 2021. We have been trending up in this market, but our area, again, we've talked about it being insulated. We're still showing mostly a seller's market in a majority of our counties. Now we do have counties that are showing more of an average market. And I'll give you 2 examples. Spotsylvania right now is showing 2.6 months of inventory. Now at one point it was close to 1 month of inventory. So we're trending up, but we're not really showing anything of a buyer's market yet. Versus just one county south is showing 3.5 months of inventory as of today. So that's showing getting pretty close to a buyer's market. Not as many things are going on in Caroline County as say Spotsylvania. It's not a very big county compared to say Spotsylvania, but it is showing if you just go one counties further, not only will you get probably more to pick from, but you also get a better price. The median sales price is about $390 in Caroline County right now versus Spotsylvania, which is $438. Days on the market, Spotsylvania is 29, Caroline is 43. These are all things that you should be paying attention to as a buyer looking at the MLS. Every county is going to be a little bit different. And so once you start picking up on these patterns, you'll be able to see, hey, the house didn't sell in 48 days, which is the average market. They're overpriced or something's wrong with that house. And that's when you could maybe be open to more negotiation. As a listing agent, I'm telling my seller, calm down. The average day on the market right now is 48. If we don't have that house moved by say day 48, then maybe we need to talk about adjusting the price or the marketing or something like that. But these again are all regionally different. So the last thing I'm going to leave you on is picking a realtor that knows these kind of things. Picking a realtor that actually studies the market and isn't just making Instagram reels as I'm making a YouTube video, of course. Make sure they understand the area, the different neighborhoods, the different schools, the different days on the market. Make sure you're picking a realtor that hones their craft. And then these are all things that you can be doing. Because remember, a house is a gigantic purchase. It's not like we're going to buy a car, even though it's a big purchase these days, but it's not like we're going to go buy a shirt. This is something that could really affect your life. And also you can grow great wealth over time by picking the right property and just living the long game of investing in real estate. It's great. I'm a huge fan of it. I do it. I invest in short and long term at this point. And I think it's a very silent wealth builder. All right, so remember, when you're looking at those listings, The photos and the listing only tell a little bit about it. The deeper you dive into this stuff, the better it gets and you kind of become an expert in the field. So don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what we're here for. And of course, if you're looking in Virginia, I would love to help you. Feel free to reach out to me. And if you're a first-time home buyer, check out my last video, which I did on first-time home buying. It's filled with a lot of tips and insights on being a first-time home buyer and navigating that process from start to finish. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Oh yeah, and come back next week because we're going to be doing a video on your pre-listing prep and little things that can go a long way before we list the house.